I'm Isabella and I'm the Year 7 Girls Leader. Today I'll be reading from Mark 4:35, 5-20. That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." They went across the lake to the region of Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him any more, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on a nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by a legion of demons, sitting there dressed and in his right mind. They were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged him to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you, and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed.
Hi MBM Youth, it's Emily. It's so good to see you online tonight, and our talk tonight is going to be very interesting. So if you were listening to the Bible reading, I think you would have noticed that there's a lot of drama going on in the stories. And there's one main idea that we see through both of these stories. And that is the idea of Jesus and his authority. So when you think authority, there are a couple different ways we could think about that, like a police car pulling you over. You got a speeding ticket. Or the lifeguard at the pool blows the whistle. "Hey, stop running at the pool." Or it could be your teacher. You have to do this, this, this to pass your assessment. But the authority we're talking about today, I'd like to call it more like an alpha move. If you're familiar with what an alpha move is, then why don't we think about it in the context of a story? And here is a story about an alpha move that I recently experienced. So a good friend of mine, Arn, you know him, he just moved into a granny flat a couple months ago. And on the day that he went in to sign the lease, I was with him. He got the keys. We went, had a look at the house, sort of explored around. And then when we were done, we wanted to lock the whole place up. So we did. And after we locked everything up, I thought maybe we should try and unlock the doors so that we know which keys match which doors. So I took the key for the sliding glass door and I put it in and it wouldn't budge. And so I took it out, put it in again, put all my strength into it. It just wouldn't budge. And so I'm thinking, I think we might have just locked ourselves out of the house. So I say to Arn, "Hey, can you try this? Because I can't get this to move. So he gets the key, puts the key in, he can't move it, takes it out, puts it in again, tries everything. We just can't get it to budge. And so we call the landlord who's right next door and say, hey, we can't get the key to work for the sliding glass door. Could you give us a hand? So the landlord's wife comes over and she takes the key, she puts it in the door. She can't get it to work either. And so she's like, oh, maybe the lock is broken. We didn't know that. And so she calls her husband over. Her husband comes over. He's like, oh, this key. And he takes the key, he puts it in the door, and he unlocks the door in one move. That is an alpha move. When you are in a situation that you just can't quite see your way out of, you've tried everything, and then someone comes along, immediately fixes it. Now, we're going to imagine today these two stories as if we're looking through the 4 different windows from a popular children's daytime television show. And we're going to look first through the round window, which will show us the setting. So that is what's happening in the background. We're going to look through the square window, which shows us the characters. Who are they? What are they doing? We're going to look through the arch window, which is where Jesus pulls the alpha move that only Jesus can do. And then finally, we look through the diamond window, and that shows us everyone's reaction to what they just saw. We have a lot of ground to cover today, so let's jump right in. In the first story, we look through the round window and we see a boat on the lake. And in the distance, a storm is brewing and it's getting closer and closer and the waves are getting bigger and bigger. And in the text, Mark shows us that this is the worst storm ever. They are in big trouble. And we see the characters. First of all, Jesus taking a nap in the back of the boat. He's got a cushion and he is fast asleep. And the disciples are freaking out. Now keep in mind as well, these disciples, some of them are fishermen. They've been on the lake a lot. And if they're panicking, you better be panicking. Because if they can't do anything, we're in big trouble. And they go over to Jesus and they shake him awake and they say, Jesus, what's the matter with you? You're going to let us drown? Don't you care? And then Jesus gets up. And this is where the alpha move comes in. He stands in the front of the boat and he just says to the wind and the waves, be still. And they're still, just like that. This is where Jesus shows his authority in a way that only he can. Nobody else could have done that. Now, interestingly enough, when we look at the diamond window and we see their reaction, we see Jesus look at the disciples and he says, why were you so afraid? Where is your faith? And the disciples react to this by being more afraid. If you thought they were afraid when they were about to drown, they are now even more afraid because they're talking amongst each other and they're saying, whoa, who does that? Like nobody can just walk up to the ocean and say, be still, and it's just still. They are so afraid. And interestingly enough, this is where Mark leaves the story. He doesn't actually tell us what more they said, what more they did. And the next thing, we're in the next story. So I want us to put a pin in that reaction of the disciples. We'll come back to it. We have a new setting. They've landed on the shore. There are hills around, there's a big herd of pigs close by, and there are tombs in the distance, but the landscape is not the issue here. The problem is the characters that we see. Jesus and the disciples are there, obviously, but there is a wild man running at full speed to Jesus, falling on his knees, and he says, Jesus, don't torture me. And we find out this man has been demon-possessed for years, and nobody has been able to help him. And Mark goes into great detail. He says, you thought you could tie him up? You can't tie him up. You use chains? He breaks them. Nobody with any amount of strength could possibly control this man. He was so far gone beyond help that nobody could do a thing about it. And the reason why this is so important that we recognize this character here is because it shows us a new way in which Jesus uses his authority. And so when we see Jesus use his authority, first of all, he's actually having a conversation with this man. Keep in mind, this guy has been running wild among the tombs. He's been hurting himself and everybody that comes near him. And Jesus here is having a conversation with him. And these demons are begging Jesus to have mercy on them. And the conversation is just going back and forth. The demons are saying, please don't torture us. Please don't send us to nowhere. And Jesus says, you got to go. You got to leave this man. And so they say, please just send us into the pigs. So Jesus says, all right, go into the pigs. And then you see a whole herd of 2,000 pigs. That's a lot of pigs. They're just into the lake. And the pig herders, are they still called shepherds if they look after pigs? Anyway, the pig herders, they run off to the town and they tell everybody, you'll never guess what just happened. And that's where we start to see these reactions. The pig herders come back with the townspeople. And they are all looking at Jesus. They're looking at this man sitting at his feet. They're looking at this demon-possessed man who used to be the biggest threat to their community, now sitting at Jesus' feet, fully clothed, in his right mind. They haven't seen this man in years do anything that closely resembled being sane. And Jesus is standing and talking to this man. Now, the pig herders and the townspeople, they say to Jesus, get out of here. You cannot get out of here fast enough. They are so afraid of what Jesus has just done. They're so afraid of all the pigs that they just lost. They don't see the man who is sane. They see all the things that could possibly go wrong. They say, okay, this guy's got to go. He is going to cause some serious shakeups. And they beg him to go as quickly as he possibly can. And the other reaction that we see is this man who's just been healed. He is begging Jesus, please let me go with you. Please let me go with you. He's just met the person who has given him hope, who has healed him. And he's begging Jesus, please let me go with you. And Jesus says, I want you to stay. I want you to go and talk to everybody in the towns around here and share what Jesus did for you. And the man gets up and he goes. And it's so interesting as we look at the reactions of people to Jesus' authority. We have to take a look at our own reactions. Now, it seems that there are two different reactions people tend to have. One is fear and the other is faith. And that's actually a tricky one because we get this idea that maybe if I have faith, then I shouldn't have any fear. But the fear that people experience is not a fear of, oh no, like what's going to happen to me? Their fear is that Jesus' authority is the scariest thing they've ever come in contact with, because if Jesus is not on their side, then they have no say in what happens to them. Now, the faith, on the other hand, the man who is healed has this faith reaction, a faith of, wow, Jesus has done everything for me. And the faith trusts Jesus' heart. And that's so important because that's where we see the difference between fear and faith. And when you look at Jesus' authority, you're going to have one of those reactions. You can either react with, okay, well, I got to get as far away as I can from Jesus because I don't want him practicing that authority over me. Or you can react by, wow, if Jesus has all this authority and he's on my side, then who can stand against that? Nobody stands a chance against Jesus. And so when you look through your arch window, what is it that Jesus needs authority over in your life? Something that will challenge us is recognizing that Jesus already has authority over all the things in our life. Maybe it's how you speak to people, maybe it's how you treat people, maybe it's a secret sin that you're hiding deep inside of your heart and you're hoping that Jesus hasn't noticed. Here's the deal, he has noticed. He sees it, but he still loves you. And if Jesus has seen all of you and still loves all of you, then that's something worth surrendering to, because that's an authority you can trust. That's an authority that is going to change your life for the better. Now, let's talk about characters, right? If Jesus is a character in your life, how does that change things? I think we see Jesus as, the character that shows up when we open the Bible or when we go to church. What if Jesus were a character in your life as real as your schoolmates or your family or your friends that you see at youth? How would that change your life? And remember, this isn't to be like, Jesus is watching, better behave, but it's realizing that Jesus is there in your everyday. And if Jesus is there in your everyday and he sees everything and he still loves you, that means that you're never alone. And that means that you have nothing to fear. And finally, I want to talk about, where do you see Jesus in your landscape? I think a lot of us have this idea that one day we're going to grow up, we're going to get smarter, stronger, faster, more influential, we're going to move into the right circle, maybe become missionaries. You may have a heart for Jesus that's waiting to take off. But remember what Jesus said to the man that he healed? He didn't say, come with me, train for a couple of years, maybe I'll let you go and, practice on a couple disciples. He actually says, go to where you came from. Go and tell what Jesus did for you. And that's where I challenge you today. Where you are now is where Jesus wants you to speak. Where you are now is where your voice matters. Where you are now is where Jesus has shown you love and grace. Where you are now is where Jesus shows his authority. And if Jesus has shown his authority over you to love you and to call you his own, if that's not the kind of news that you can't shout from the rooftops, I don't know what is. And so I challenge you today, don't wait. Don't wait. Bring your voice to where you are, because where you are is where your voice matters the most. Your voice makes a difference because Jesus has made a difference to you. And so, MBM Youth, it's my prayer that we take these words really seriously. We take it seriously that Jesus has authority. And we take it seriously that Jesus uses his authority to call us his own. And so my prayer is that we would run with that. We would share that. We would grow in that, and that it would change us from the inside out. Because that is where Jesus' authority makes the difference. It's today, and it's for all of eternity to come. Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much for your word. I thank you for this beautiful story that we see Jesus having ultimate authority over places and people that had no hope. And I pray that these youth that are listening tonight, that they would open their hearts to experience that love, that perfect authority from you, because that's where our lives are transformed, is when we allow you to have full authority over us. And I just pray that we would be blessed, that we would be bold, that we would speak your word, your truth, your love with so much boldness and conviction that it changes the world around us today. And I pray in Jesus' name, amen. There's going to be some discussion questions down below. If you want to talk about those with your friends, with your family, please take this and think about it and be blessed. you.